So we're on to the Climate Snapshots, as I said, one of the favorite parts of a CCF gathering. And it's quite a challenging format for the presenters, so I'm just asking you to be sympathetic and understanding, because it's always very entertaining for the audience, because we'll have 6 projects given with 6 slides in 6 minutes. So the presenter is not in control of the slides. So it's quite a challenge for them. And then, maybe they didn't know that, but following the presentations, we'll then have a chance, they'll join me up here and we'll have a panel discussion, so you'll have a chance to ask questions after we've run through all of them. And again, these snapshots will be focusing on the theme of youth engagement. So our first presenter is Alex Luchford from Edinburgh College Students Association. Alex?
I'm Alex and this is Pavel. We are both from Edinburgh College Students Association, and we're going to be talking about our low carbon travel project. I didn't realise that the slides would change automatically, so please bear with us.
So Edinburgh College is one of Scotland's largest further education colleges with 19,000 students spread across 4 campuses. There are different courses from accounting and social sciences to hairdressing and construction. The Students' Association, or EXA, is an independent charity that operates within the college to represent these students and ensure they have the best time while studying. So basically, our 2-year project aims to engage students on sustainable travel in order to reduce their carbon emissions and raise awareness of climate change. The first thing we did once the term started was to conduct a student survey, and we got about 5,000 responses. And we found out that travel is a big issue at the college. Over a fifth of students, one-fifth of all the students studying drive to college, and the vast majority of those students drive by themselves, and they do not share a car with anyone. Furthermore, active travel rates are relatively low comparing to other Edinburgh-based institutions of study. And especially for cycling, only 2.4% of all the students cycle. Currently, we're working on various programs to boost sustainable transport usage, including cycle training, fuel-efficient driver training, which was very successful, and a lift-sharing scheme. We are also looking into providing support to students with additional support needs, to help them plan their journeys and to help them take a bus instead of a taxi, if possible. Being a further education college, our students are primarily young and under 25 years of age, about 59% of them. Claire and Alex, Claire is there. They're also both under the age of 25, and we also employ 4 part-time student staff members to help with the project at each of the campuses. And I'm also one of them.
We got...
I think it's the next slide.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so one real highlight has been working with our part-time assistants. We had 40 applications, and the successful candidates, 2 of them are with us today, are brilliant, basically. They're full of enthusiasm and ideas, and they've all got different skills which they bring to the role and help us on different aspects of the project. So another benefit is that thanks to the training budget, which we have because of CCF money, we can offer them lots of opportunities to develop new skills and gain further experience. And this was really a key part of the project, was giving students work experience alongside their studies. And I'm sure that whatever they get up to, they'll all go really far and will bring a sustainable mindset to whatever they end up in, even if that's not specifically in the environmental sector. Clearly, we didn't write enough. So one of the benefits of working with young people, working with the part-time assistants who are also students is a really great way to get student perspective on the project. We can bounce ideas around and get their opinions on what would appeal to college students specifically, and also what would sink like a lead balloon. But more generally speaking, when we're working on behavior change projects, I think working with young people is very important because it gives an opportunity to embed sustainable behaviors in at an early age. And most of our students are under 25, with a large chunk of that being under the age of 18 and having just left school. So it is they're kind of taking their first steps into independent adult life. And it's basically a prime time to try and help them form sustainable habits, although, as I will come on to, that hasn't always been easy. We really didn't write enough. Okay, we've got a bunch to say here, so this might overrun. One of the main issues so far has been that interest in the project from students has been quite low, and feedback basically makes it clear that our students have other priorities beyond sustainability. In particular, mental health and financial difficulties are high on students' agenda, and physical inactivity is also another concern. So this has led us to reconsider our approach. Firstly, I think that and I also think that this goes for anyone working behavior change, so lots of people here, we need to think carefully about how we communicate environmental issues so that we don't turn people off. Sustainable transport can be hugely beneficial to your mental and physical well-being and also help you save money too. So I think focusing on those benefits rather than the costs of an unsustainable lifestyle is very important. Secondly, we've also been looking at other ways we can engage our students. So we are working with tutors on embedding sustainability into their curricula, for example, talking to automotive students about sustainability in the car industry. We basically need to go to the students and not wait for them to come to us. One final point is that demographics plays a huge role in this. 10% of Edinburgh College students come from the 10% most deprived communities in Scotland, and almost 2/3 of those students are living at home in Edinburgh, also in areas of high deprivation. So I think it's key, really, that when you're living at home in a family which is struggling to get by, sustainability is never going to be a priority for you. You just have less capacity to change your behavior. It might be that you don't have the money to buy a bike, or you're going to struggle to convince your parents because it's them who has the decision to switch to a renewable energy supplier. And it's often said that climate change is seen as a middle-class issue, and I think our experience at Edinburgh College definitely confirms that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, well done. It's always hard to be the first one. Our second presenter is Jane Dixon from Remode. Jane? There she is.
Thank you. So I wasn't quite expecting to be here today. Gillian Steele, who's the project director, was hoping to be here. Sadly, she couldn't make it, so I'm standing in her shoes. So please bear with me if I don't manage to fill all the slides. So a little bit about Remode. Remode is just a year old, but it actually has grown from the youth engagement project of LEAP, who some of you might have seen the LEAP stand out in the hall earlier on. And our aim is to increase understanding of the environmental impact of textiles, the fashion and textiles industry. There's more and more in the media about this at the moment, which is working well for us. It's quite a hot topic, and we try and, we're raising awareness of this and giving people the skills and opportunities to try and deal with the issues. Okay, so how we do this, we have two bases. We have a workspace in Lochwinnock, which is a small village in Renfrewshire, and we also recently have moved into premises in Paisley, based at the University of the West of Scotland. So we sell redesigned and remoded clothing, and we also have quite an extensive workshop program. So the aim is to give people the capacity to be able to deal with the the carbon footprint of the clothes they wear. So they can buy second-hand clothes, they can swap clothes, and they can learn how to upcycle, they can learn how to mend, and it's about extending the life of the clothes that they already have. And we're sort of, within the workshop format, we are able to have really good quality conversations with the young people that we work with. Okay, so our project is led by the participants. The project, as I said, it started its life in Lochwinnock as a youth engagement programme, and we still have a really successful, strong group of young people in Lochwinnock who are under 18-year-olds, and they very much feed into the work that we do. We seek their feedback, and they contribute, and we are lucky enough to have their input into board meetings as well, which we find really valuable. The new work that we've just doing, as I say, we've just moved into Paisley. We're starting to work with groups there, and we're hoping that similarly we will have representation from the groups in Paisley on our board. There we go. Okay, so what has been the highlight? So Gillian's chosen as the highlight. These are some shots from the fashion show from last year, and we also have a fashion show coming up in March next year. And this is really the focus of everything that we've done throughout the year. And it's a fantastic opportunity for celebrating everything that we've done, but also it's another awareness-raising opportunity because we have family and friends and participants coming along. The models are young people and students and other people who want to join in. And as part of the programme, we also have a filmmaking element. So similarly to the way there have been films here today, we will have films throughout the fashion show, which again, young people have been involved with in the making. And we find that this is quite a good way of engaging boys because sewing inevitably does seem to appeal to girls. But yes, if we bring in the techie side, it's quite a good way of getting boys involved with the soundtrack element and the filmmaking element. Okay, so again, this is a slide that Gillian's written about the benefits of having young people involved in the project. They're incredibly energetic. Our group of under 18-year-olds, Recycle or Die, just love what they do, and it's really rewarding and it's really fantastic to see their involvement. And they're idealistic. They really are idealistic. And again, the groups that we've just started working with in Paisley, it's a mix, but some of the people that we are working with are really, really passionate about sustainability, and we're being able to give them the opportunity to do something, to take action about the things that they care about. Okay, and then learning and reflection. Yes, we have to listen, I think, which is what the group earlier on, or the workshop that I was in earlier on about young people, is that it's all very well for us to say, this is how we want to do our project, this is what we want to do, but we do have to make sure that we're actually, it's a two-way communication. We're telling them and we're trying to teach them and we're trying to involve them with things, but we want them, we want to hear what they've got to say and what they think about our plans. Okay, and that's it. And they're Gillian's details. Thank you very much.
Right, excellent, thank you. And our third presenter is Ali Graham from Beachbrae. Ali Graham, thank you.
Hello, I'm Ali, and I would like to tell you about what we're up to in the woods in Blackridge. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you why we do what we do, because if we don't have a why, what we do doesn't matter. So why we do what we do. We all need connection, we all need healing, and we all grow as we learn. So how do we do this? What does this look like? We get people outside and we connect them to the magic that's all around us. So we're based in a community, we have a community garden, and in there we grow food. Could you go to the next one? Thank you. well, we grow food, so that we do it in the community garden. We have a polytunnel and veg plots, and an orchard and a forest garden. We cook locally and seasonally. We do it both in the woods, in the garden ourselves, but we also do it in schools, in the classrooms. We help folk reduce food waste. This is in the school canteen, but also in people's homes. And we engage with the environment to learn and share, which is basically about exploring. So we explore in the garden and the orchard, in the woods, and we've got a pond, and that's a big hit with young people. So practically, we work with 2 primary schools and 1 high school. They come to us and we go to them. We have a program for people with diagnosed mental health conditions that is outside doing conservation, fire cooking, mindfulness, and exploring. We run nature clubs and conservation projects to help people engage with the environment. We have garden drop-ins, and as we talked about, we cook on the fire and we explore the natural world together. So, how are young people involved in the project? They plant the veg, they cook seasonal meals, they harvest veg, they do the local conservation work, and they also help reduce food waste in schools, homes, and communities. So essentially, young people are involved in everything. We don't exclusively work with young people, but we work primarily with young people and find that they're a fantastic way to get their parents and grandparents to do things that we can't get their parents or grandparents to do. So what has been the highlight? There's been quite a few different highlights. We had a summer environmental club where we had a group of young people from both Blackridge and Armadale come and explore, come up with what games they wanted to do. It was very much co-creation, so they came up with and decided what they wanted to do. We had an environmental project that just finished in Armadale at Black Moss, doing conservation. A nice story from that is so 17 kids consistently showing up in November when it's freezing outside for several hours a day, and they were pulling saplings out of the moss to help retain the water and create the atmosphere. And they were going to do activities and games at the end, and after they had their break, they asked if they could keep pulling saplings out instead of doing the games and activities. So a group of committed young people. And we also got to visit the Parliament last week, but that wasn't in the presentation because so they got to go and talk about these projects for the Central Scotland Green Network event, which was great. So benefits of young people being involved in the project: the youth are engaged, often more engaged than adults are. So if we pause and pay attention to that, they're a source of curiosity. Everything's connected, and if we talk about that and show them how it's all connected and work with that ourselves, you can talk and teach about anything by being outside. And wonder's contagious, but again, you can't give something that you don't have yourself. So learning and reflection. Ask questions. We don't tell people what we want them to do. We ask them what their experience is, and we use that to ask more questions and create a dialogue. So part of that is being curious and being open to learn. A week in wonder. Curiosity can lead to wonder, and if you're present, it's amazing what can happen. And again, back to that, you can't give what you don't have. So if I'm not here being curious and present with the young people, how can I expect them to be curious and present with what it is that we're talking about? And groups decide what they want to do, which is empowering. So asking them, giving them support, not saying we could do things that aren't achievable, but helping give them guidance and support to figure out what it is they want to do. So that is us. Thank you, and feel free to ask questions later. Cheers.
Thanks very much. Ellie, the next presentation, our fourth one, is from Wendy Russell with Revolve Recycle.
Hello everyone. Just to let you know, I have a really annoying cough, so I'll try not cough in the mic and deafen you. I'm Wendy Russell. I'm the project manager of the Revolve Recycle project. Our organisation who runs Revolve is called LEAP, not the LEAP that was up earlier, but another LEAP. We are Lightburn Elderly Association project based in South Lanarkshire. LEAP was set up in 1992 by older people who saw a gap in provision for themselves for when they come into retirement and go into older age. So we enhance the lives of older people within our community by giving them opportunities and chances to play a real significant role within their community, either through volunteering or through getting services and things like that for themselves and having a voice. The Revolve Recycle project was set up in 2015, and it was older people we did a bit of consultation, and we asked them what rips your knitting. So we asked them, what annoys you? And a big thing that they came up with was the throwaway culture. They were going on about young people today, they throw things away. In my day, you had one pair of shoes and you wore them to weddings and you wore them to church. And, in this day, everybody's got shoes and everybody's got clothes and they fling all the clothes away and nobody mends and nobody swaps and nobody shares. So we thought that's quite an interesting concept. And we started to do a bit of groundwork and start to, develop a project around about that idea. And it was definitely the talent and the passion and the skills of our volunteers who started this project off and who grew and made it work. Today, we run 3 swap shop boutiques. So we have one in Rutherglen, Cambuslang and Hamilton. And we're about to open one in North Lanarkshire as well pretty soon. We also run a clothing bank for some of the most poor-off people in our community, as well as pop-up shops across whoever wants us. We always say whoever wants to hear about us, we'll always go out. We do upcycling workshops within schools and communities, and we do environmental projects for, again, anybody who wants to listen. We also do consultancy and mentoring for projects who want to set up similar things to ourselves. So how does an older person's charity involve young people? Well, it's quite simple. The passion came from older people wanting to involve young people. They wanted to share their skills and their knowledge. So we started off where you would normally always start, and that was in the schools. And we ran 6-week workshops initially, teaching people how to sew and how to upcycle. So it was basic sewing skills, and eventually the children created a banner which was then hung in their assembly to remind them of the environmental messages that we had taught them. We then went on to, we saw how well our swap shops were doing. So we thought, young people could deliver these within their own schools as well. So we did another 6-week workshops within schools, and we asked young people to come into our shops, find out how we did things, and then replicate that within their schools. We do outreach with all sorts of youth service providers. Recently, we had some young people from the Fernhill area come to us. They were organising a Christmas party for people in their community, and they wanted everyone to wear Christmas jumpers. But what they realised is probably everyone couldn't afford to buy a Christmas jumper. So they came to us, and our volunteers went to the club and helped them to produce Christmas-themed things that people could just apply to their own T-shirts and jumpers, reducing waste. We also have opportunities for people to come and volunteer and do work placements, as well as family fun days, so that people can learn together and learn these skills. So what are the highlights for us? Probably one of the most significant highlights is we've currently got 4 swap shops running within the schools in our community by children and young people. We have 12 schools in our area who all have our upcycled banners, so that throughout all the different years, different children can see the messages that the other years had learned. We had young people be taught how to be models on a catwalk by Eunice Olamide, MBE, at our #NoTags fashion show, which took place in May. And we also have currently 812 members, which relates to about 12% of our membership, who are young people themselves and who often use the services that we provide. Just need to find my notes. So what are the benefits? I think for me, the benefits are marrying the enthusiasm of young people with the skills and experience that older people have. Definitely that nurturing that goes on between older people and young people, and the ability for us to create a platform for that to take place. Young people bring a modern approach to a very vintage idea as well. So bearing in mind that it was older people who came up with the idea, it's young people that really created our brand, that really created our message, and who help us to deliver things on social media and make sure that more people are coming to our services. Young people attract other young people as well, so by bringing in young people we can have more youthful clothing, which is great for me, more youthful ideas, and a more youthful atmosphere that really creates a buzz around about Revolve. And that was quite evident with our recent fashion show. And also the legacy that young people have as well. You know, it's young people who are buying fast fashion, so if we can get to young people early and show them the benefits of swapping and sharing, then that is going to have a lasting legacy as well. So what have we learned? Yep, learning and reflection. Going well with these slides. Are you changing them for me, or am I? So learning and reflection. One of the biggest things, I think, is that young people are a lot smarter than we ever give them credit for. You know, when we were going into schools, it was young people who were bringing up some of the really big conversations about where their clothes come from, who's making their clothes and how these people are being treated. And that was a real eye-opener for me, and it really, you know, it set my heart alight. And also, we weren't afraid to go into schools and really test young people, have them calculate their carbon footprint, have them do the maths that we all hate to do for our reports. We had young people do that for us. Don't tell CCF. I think it's really important to connect the generations as well, because by connecting the generations, you're breaking down the barriers. People are learning from each other from the past and from the present, and that can only, you know, help to form new ideas and new approaches to things. And also, last but not least, and this is quite a seasonal thing to take on board, young people are the gateway to the family decision makers. If you can get to young people and allow them to buy umpteen amounts of plastic toys at this time of the season, imagine the parent pressure if you can get to young people with your message. That was evidenced with us when we did the schools project, because we had so many mums that would come in with their tail between their legs and go, "My daughter sent me, you were in our school." And we realised the power of getting to young people with our message, and that then, you know, ripples out within the family as well. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, our next presenter is Mel Hall from St. Paul's Youth Forum. Did I get that right? You're not Mel Hall.
We're not Mel.
Sorry. This isn't Mel, but they'll tell you who they are.
Hi there, so my name's Ben.
And I'm Joe.
And we are representing St. Paul's Youth Forum, Black Hills Growing and Cycling here. St. Paul's was set up in 1997, and it's part of, it's a collection of youth projects. So we have a youth radio station, we have more traditional youth work, we have a cycling project and the growing project. And the cycling project and the growing project is funded, our main funder is the CCF. So we try and make sure that young people are always at the heart of the decision-making process at St. Paul's Youth Forum. And one of the ways we do that is to make sure that young people make over half of our board members.
Okay, so this year we've been building on our very successful previous project, CCF 120. We've been expanding our household growing spaces, working with a lot of people in the community to develop their own growing spaces. Ben here has built a cycling hub in one of the local secondary schools, and we've been working with the children there, running bike maintenance workshops, cycling lessons, bike rides, and hopefully developing some of their skills to look into some further employment. We've also been using Fair Share, which is repurposed food that would otherwise go to landfill. And with that food, we've been running twice weekly community meals, which ties into our dignified response to food poverty. These are completely free weekly meals for anyone in the community who's maybe going through a hard time, and these were devised and developed by my good colleague Mel, whose birthday it happens to be today, so happy birthday, Mel.
How are young people involved in the project? So we work closely with local nurseries and secondary schools. We have a youth committee which steers project planning, and we create hopefully an enabling space for young people to volunteer in all our workshops and classes. We work closely with our youth workers to consult the young people at all stages of the project delivery and planning. Joe and I both live in the south side, and we're a good example of us coming into the community we work in, but being aware that we're not the experts in that community. The experts in that community are those that live and grow up in that community. So the youth workers that we work with are from that community, they live in that community, and their expertise really shows us how young people can be involved, not just tokenistically, but actually involved in the project planning and implementation.
So what has been the highlight? So it might sound really cheesy or glib, but like genuinely for me the highlight is watching the young people grow and develop through the project. The young people in our community face a number of challenges. A lot of them have struggled with low confidence, long-term unemployment, maybe issues around criminal justice, and we've seen them be upskilled, become volunteers. Some of them have become sessional staff, reintegrate into their community, and genuinely they're essential to the running of our project. It wouldn't happen without them. And watching that's fantastic. Also, Summer Club, I don't have enough time to talk about it, but it's fantastic. Ask me about it at the Q&A. It was a buzz.
So the benefits of young people being involved in the project, this list could go on and on. But one of, the involved in the project planning and delivery, as I've mentioned before, and young people, as Joe has just mentioned, being integral volunteers, making things happen. And I think with the young people being involved in the planning and delivery of projects, that they're able to communicate to us authentically how messy and complex their lives are, and to show us how important flexibility is to include young people. So we've got a youth committee, we've got young people on our board, but actually the discussions over bike maintenance or cooking club and that constant feedback between young people and staff is absolutely essential. Not everyone wants to be on a board, not everyone wants to be on a committee, and it's making sure that everyone, all the young people in our committee, can have that power to feed back to the project.
Great. So learning and reflection, I think the most important point to take away, particularly if you're wanting to start up a project engaging young people, is you can't just see young people as participants. It can't just be numbers through the door. They need to be intimately involved at all stages, project planning, delivery, reflection at the end. Like we've said a few times, we couldn't run like half the stuff we do if we didn't have regular young people volunteering with us. Apart from that, growing tends to work really well with smaller kids. If anyone has any idea how to get a teenager to grow anything, please talk to me. It's a struggle, let me tell you. And yeah, that's about it.
So yeah, that's just for us to wrap up. I guess the challenge for our project and many projects is how to move away from a model of citizen and youth participation that is tokenistic to one that actually redistributes power to young people so they can make decisions about the things that affect their communities, their nation and their world. We found through our project that young people have the ability to re-see and reimagine their world, but they need the power and the encouragement to do this. Thank you very much.
And our last presentation is from Gillian Kirkwood with Why Sorted. Go, Gillian.
Last. Thanks for having us today. A wee bit different towards the end because we're quite a new project to the Climate Challenge Fund. Why Sort It? An unusual name. We're a local project, a youth project based in West Dunbartonshire. We support young people who are aged between 8 and 25. We're Western Bartonshire wide, so as far as I know, there's no any other Y sorters in Scotland. We're unique to that area. We are a registered charity and a limited company, and why I highlight that is that all the members, all our trustees and all our directors of Y Sorter are all young people that have came through our project. So, yep, all my bosses are aged between 16 and 25. And Alan Sugar doesn't get a look in sometimes. We might be a local project, but with a big punch. It says up here that we support over 400 young people a year. I would say I've just finished our annual report this week, and it's well over the 500 mark. Spoke quite a lot about young people today, and obviously at the beginning, the speeches at the beginning of today, mentioning the year of young people, 2018, Y Sorted celebrating 18 years as well. But when we're speaking about young folk, ages and stages, but also about young carers, young people are cared for as well, care experienced, and substance misuse as well comes into play. So it's always good to consider that, when we're thinking about young people, where they're coming from. We do have a network as well, of youth clubs that we support. The initiative that we do get support from the Climate Challenge Fund is for street bikes. It's a 2-year project. It's looking about getting basically young people on their bikes but in active travel. It is about learning about bike maintenance. It is about, as I say, learning about the impact of carbon as well on our planet. Oh, it's okay to move forward. So, in terms of where we're at just now, we've got 2 after-school clubs that we deliver, and we've also got an after-school drop-in. As I say, it's very early days, so in terms of highlights, that is difficult at this stage to kind of to share that with you. Just to kind of highlight, in terms of Western Bartonshire, we're the 4th most deprived area in Scotland, so it does come with its significant kind of challenges, and that's one of the things we're finding with street bikes. And now I know why it's called the Climate Challenge Fund for good reason. So just thought we'd kind of share a project with you, and I know there's a Q&A session as well to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, it's obvious we could have had a whole day of the gathering just talking about youth engagement and all of us learning more about it, but we've got the session and that's a good start. So if I could invite the speakers back up for Q&A. And I'm sure many of you have already been scribbling down or have some thoughts about, either questions or particular thoughts that you've taken away from this. And will the mics, do we have mobile or handout mics will be coming. So any hands up for questions? Questions or comment, reflection, something you've learned? Right. Sorry. There you
Yeah,
go.
this is for the Edinburgh College. So I also work with a university, and I'm just wondering how you get students to carry on volunteering for you, even though like Freshers Week and things like that have ended and they are no longer interested in anything. So just how do you get volunteers to stay?
So the short answer is that we don't. We have, at the start, we tried to get student volunteers and we had a few, like 1 or 2 interested, but the take-up was very low, almost non-existent. We've put on events where just no one turns up. And I think one thing to say is that college is very different to university. It's the very first thing I was told when I first started working at the college was, and it's been repeated and repeated, college is different to university. It's seen much more as a school atmosphere. People turn up, they go to their classes, they go home. There is no sense of taking part in societies. There's no extracurricular activities. if you're putting on an event, you squeeze it into lunchtime and you might get 2 people turning up. That's been a real struggle for us to try and get people engaged, and that's why we've turned away from, I mean, we will still be putting on events and activities and trying to make them more tailored to people's interests, but that's also why we've turned a lot of our focus onto going into classrooms and talking to students that way, because, you know, it's bums on seats, they have to listen to us in a sense. Yeah, it's been a real struggle.
Hi there. So it was mentioned this morning, this idea of kind of intergenerational justice and how kind of young people are going to feel the effects of climate change much more than older folk, I guess. And I was just wondering, kind of thinking about that, how young people feel about climate change, if they feel anything about it at all, or are they just interested in other things? I'm just wondering, are they worried, scared, angry?
Anybody want to take that first? Wants to jump in?
Thanks. My experience of working within the schools is that young people are quite enthused by solutions. I think it's the older generation that are a bit more worried and a bit more doom and gloom and a bit more, you know, oh, what's the point? We've wasted it now. Whereas young people are very switched on to new ideas and new approaches and let's just get it done. And that's been my experience across the board in schools and youth clubs. They're engaged. They're engaged through the schools. They're engaged by other projects such as the ones that are, you know, in here today. And they just want to get on with it and get the job done.
I would probably echo that. You know, I don't know why I was surprised, like even when we started the street bikes project, although it's, as I say, it's early days, but the amount that young people actually do know and quite quickly start coming up with solutions how to overcome that. They are fantastic problem solvers, but I think sometimes the issue is that we maybe listen, but we don't actually hear what it is that they're maybe trying to tell us, so that we can then put that into kind of practice and support them to be able to achieve whatever climate goal that might be, whether it's in education or out in their community. So again, that how adults then help facilitate that process is a massive role, but not taken away as well. The guys hit on participation. It's not participatory, it's actually letting them lead on that and own it, more importantly. So it's just a comment on
that. My only comment would be that there's just a real mix of opinion that we come across. So I don't think I could say all young people feel this way. I'd like to think some of the young people that we engage with, we give them something to do if they care about it. So it's like, here are the tools. If you care, this is what you can do. You can choose to shop secondhand. You can choose to extend the life of your clothing by learning how to fix it. You can learn to make your own clothes, and it empowers them because they know what they're doing and it's a tangible thing. But that's not to say we don't come up against young people who go, I like Primark, I'm not going to change. So, yeah, it's sort of real world. Yeah.
Can we take another question? So we get as much from the audience. We had someone else at that same table.
Hi, I had a question about flexibility. So quite a few of you spoke about listening to the young people involved in shaping and changing the project to reflect what they were interested in. And I wondered how you managed to do that within the framework of a CCF project that's been funded to achieve a particular aim. It obviously takes a certain skill to write an application that's flexible enough to accommodate changes throughout. So I guess it's an honest question, but it seems, yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
That's a good question. It is hard, and I think so I guess I'll give an example. We had a workshop where we had 2 P4 classes come out to the polytunnels and do food. We were making pesto from stuff from the garden. We split the classes in half because 30 kids is not a good way of engaging. So we had 4 groups of 15 kids, and every single one of the sessions was different, even though our session plan was the exact same. Because they'll ask something, a bug will come up. Some will be more interested in eating green things. Some of them like the spicy mustard. Some of them don't like the spicy mustard. So it's something that I guess applying for, putting in the application, we can be quite confident in the numbers of people we're going to work with and the types of things we're going to achieve. But as far as how we get round to talking about what our aim of that session is, we have to be quite creative and think on our feet, which is what you have to do when you're working with young people anyways. But I think that speaks to the high caliber of staff and commitment and knowledge that's required for somebody to run a simple 1-hour session with 15 kids, because you not only have to keep them engaged, you have to know what you're talking about and be able to not have all of the answers, but to be able to follow where they're interested in. So like an example is we were talking about greenhouse gases, and it was a hot day, went into the polytunnel, and we're like, oh, look, can you feel the heat difference when you're in the polytunnel and when you're out of the polytunnel? And we were able to demonstrate in a very physical, felt sense, but that's something that just came out of the blue. That wasn't in the session. Now it is in the session plans, but it's something that when you're there and engaged and alive, the magic happens. And yes, you need to plan and risk assess and do all of that, but we find that we aren't going off piste, but we're following the kids that are engaged and they're going off piste.
Yeah, good question. I think one of the things, so we're funded to work with, around the bike project, one secondary school, and that would be our community. And then we have a workshop outside of the secondary school, just because some young people don't want to engage in the secondary school setting, but they do outside. And then we get young people from other secondary schools coming along, and therefore that doesn't fit neatly into the CCF fund. So I think we've been able to, and this is quite a neat example, but kind of skill those people from other secondary schools who are really, really passionate about the bike project to become volunteers, and in that way that they almost kind of peer education become volunteers. But I think also making sure you communicate a lot with your project overseer. I've forgotten the official title. Yeah, and just communicating those, because I think on the form there's somewhere it says outcomes that you haven't planned that are positive. So just keep communicating with them to make sure that you kind of know, and I guess ask them as well if there's any ways that you can kind of pick up on those passions that don't neatly fit into your CCF communities.
Good. Can I take a couple more questions as well? Maybe you can come in later, maybe it's a chance, because I want to get as many people coming in. Oops, many people able to ask questions as they want. So I'll take a couple, group those. So are there a couple more questions? Anybody? There's one here. Anybody else? Keep thinking. Go ahead.
Hi there. Speaking as an almost young person, I've also volunteered with young people in the past. There's some situations where a lot of young people, especially coming from deprived areas, can have a bit of, I don't want to say emotional baggage, or can have something going on in their personal lives that they'll sometimes bring to a youth project. Have any of you, in your experience, ever had to deal with something sort of out with your sort of, say, CCF guidelines that you were funded for, but you're quite proud of because it's had a positive outcome for that young person that they've come to you with? You don't need to name any names or anything like that, but...
Yeah, well, I would say, like, on a weekly, if not daily basis. Like, for confidentiality, obviously I won't go into any details, but that's the group we work with often do have a lot of problems outside of the type of things we're delivering. But I think just having an activity and like a space and like somewhere where they can express themselves and just sort of turn off from that outside whatever's going on is really important. I also think at St. Paul's we're like quite holistic, so we are part of like a general youth work organization that is kind of set up to deal with a lot of those problems anyway. So whilst it's not necessarily what our remit of our funding is, we consider that quite an important part of our role. And I don't think it needs to clash with the carbon savings.
You've probably seen from the presentation when I was talking about young people and the multiple barriers that they can face. So if you take young carers, for example, who are playing a caring role within their family. So we're probably coming out from an angle that's the majority of young people that we do support. So how do you then get through some of the messages around about climate change and trying to promote active travel when in reality some of them might not even have access to a bike, for example. So we're providing those kind of resources and the support as well that's wrapped around that young person. It's really key that you take that into kind of consideration. One of the things that's maybe not been mentioned as well, I did touch on saying the area that we come from, quite high in deprivation, is poverty. And I know again in the previous, some of the keynote kind of speakers talking about being prepared for activities and things like that. We had a scenario where we're asking young people to maybe wear their old clothes when they come along to sessions, and they're now saying these aren't the clothes that I've got. So it's really important in terms of making sure they've got all the support and the resources and skilled workers again that can pick up on some of that to make sure, because they are some of the foundations that maybe in a time you could have maybe took for granted, but certainly in these times that's not the case from our kind of experience.
Yes?
We've got a couple of cases or a couple of scenarios that I can give, but our clothing bank is one of the services that we offer to young people. The area that our biggest shops in, it's like 1 in 4 young people and children are living in poverty. So it's a real issue. And we've had situations where school teachers have phoned us up and said, this person needs support. But what we do is we bring the young person in, and it's not just warm clothes for the winter and good shoes. They get a range of clothes that's going to increase their confidence. It's going to make them go out and about and socialise and be a young person. So they basically get what they need as well. And I think as well, I touched on in my presentation was about the nurturing between older people and younger people and that connection in communities as well. Families are starting to break down. So giving young people the opportunity to work with older people, that kind of grandparent role. We've had instances where people have came with real serious mental health issues, and older people have nurtured them like a grandparent to the point that those people are now working now. And, so it's really beautiful stories that come out of just us having a platform to talk about our wee world. So it's nice.
Good. We have time for a couple more questions. Anybody else with questions? Yes, there's one right here in the front. Can you hand that? Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, there's one coming in.
Thank you. The importance of the intergenerational, skills passing on from older generation to younger people. The question is nowadays, you can see consumerism and young people want to be fashionable and stuff. How do you convince young people to, using your swap shop and garment, change or swap and, maybe lease or whatever, usually people want to have their own, and, after a few times in parties, they get bored of it. And I understand they can, be convinced to donate it to charities, but, in reusing instead of upcycling and recycling, how do you convince them that for youth to kind of, buy into this idea of reusing or using other people's garments? Thank you.
It's really, really simple. You just look to the high street. Look at what the high street's doing and make what you're doing similar. People are used to shopping in a certain way. So when they come into your shop, they should get the same level of service. The only difference is the clothes are second-hand. Your displays should be attracted to your market. Your shop should be clean. Your clothes should be clean. There should be no smell. If you do the Revolve accreditation, that will help you take your project step by step through different processes and procedures to make sure that your shop or your pop-up shop or whatever it is you're delivering is to a standard that people expect to shop or swap in. So there is services out there that will help you, speak to your development officer. There is support there to help you do that. And it's about branding as well. It's about having the right brand, sending out the right consistent message, using social media, using the way that young people, communicate in order to get them in.
Time for one more, if we have one more question. Anybody else? And there's right at the back.
Thank you. I've just been really inspired by listening to all of those stories and reflecting on the stories about clothing and upcycling and recycling, recognizing that, in a sense, you are facing off against a highly efficient, massively well-resourced, capitalistic system that is doing its level best to sell kids a sense of inadequacy, a sense that they need this stuff. And in a way, that's the basis of our modern economy. So, I mean, what you're doing is remarkable. But I wonder, do you ever find there's space in your conversations, in your projects, to go to that place, to go to that space, to talk, maybe not just about how actually that's a nice pair of jeans that maybe you could wear on a Saturday night, but actually challenge some of the underlying assumptions that underlie our whole economy and everything that's feeding into this? Are young people alive to some of those issues, or is that just a bit too far?
Yes, it is an issue because we're all very small organisations fighting this massive global marketing machine. But there are conversations happening, and I think one of the things that we have to do is tap into that. Just a while ago, there was a BBC One documentary, Stacey Dooley, who's on Strictly, and that has been such a big thing for us to tap into. And we were actually conducting research around about the time that programme was on, and the difference in the few days before that documentary and the few days after that documentary are people going, oh yeah, that's that fast fashion thing. And it is a huge battle that we have on our hands, but I just feel that there is more of a conversation, and that it feels like there is more in the media. And yeah, I think more and more fashion labels, even if they're not actually doing it, they're making gestures towards saying that they care about sustainability. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just probably a really quick note that I think young people as well embrace individuality as well. So in terms of there is that mass market round about like branding, especially round about clothes and trainers and things like that. I think as well there is a huge element of young folk looking for that individual label as well and trying to establish themselves. So again, it's trying to kind of tap into that and explaining the bigger picture round about it maybe.
I suppose it's also about, working. We work a lot with high street stores and basically anything that they have left over or overstock or stuff that they would normally generally fling out. We bring it into our shops and we have market-specific events. So for instance, we had coming up to prom season, we got a lot of clothes from a shop, and we basically had a prom night where young girls could come in and get, and we're talking about, again, an area of high deprivation, so they could come and they could look amazing for their prom, but they were getting high street, clothes that are brand new, but the high street didn't want them. So it's just about thinking outside the box and thinking, what do young people want? Talking to young people, what is it they're expecting? What do they want from the shop? And then trying to, where you can meet that expectation.
One last word.
So we don't do clothing or fashion, we do everything outside. But I will say that the space for those conversations happens when we're beside a young person. If you just directly ask them, what do you think about this? Some people will respond, but it's often when we're making something side by side, there's space, there's time, there's conversation. And in those in-between moments when you're doing something else and focusing on something else, particularly when you're working with your hands, there's something neurologically the magic that it does. But those spaces we're able to just let them talk and ask questions and just dig a little bit deeper, and it creates this space to look at the broader issues.
Great. Well, thanks. We're out of time for more questions, but thanks very much to our panelists who have done a fantastic job. Thank you.